Nothing says marital bliss like watching your wife primp for a party she wishes you'd skip. I stood in our brownstone's marble bathroom doorway, adjusting my tie while Nicole applied her third coat of mascara with surgical precision. You know, most wives actually want their husbands at company events, I said, watching her reflection in the mirror. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Nicole's hand paused mid-stroke. Aaron, don't be dramatic. I just said you might find it boring. Right. Boring. Not like last year when your boss Victor spent the entire evening explaining why venture capitalists are parasites while drinking champagne I helped fund. She set down her mascara with that particular clink that meant I was treading on thin ice. Victor's under a lot of pressure. The agency's been struggling. Struggling? I loosened my tie slightly. Funny how struggling companies still throw $50,000 galas. Nicole turned to face me, her expression shifting into what I'd learned to recognize as her professional smile, the one she used on difficult clients. Can we please just have one nice evening? For me? The thing about being married to a PR manager is that you become fluent in subtext. What she really meant was, can you please not embarrass me in front of people who matter more than you do? Of course, sweetheart. One nice evening coming right up. 20 minutes later, we pulled up to the Grand Harbor Hotel in my Tesla, the same Tesla Nicole had initially called ostentatious, until her colleagues started asking for rides. The valet, a kid who couldn't have been older than 20, practically genuflected when he saw the car. Evening, sir. Beautiful night for the Morrison and Associates Gala. Nicole was already out and smoothing her dress, a black number that cost more than most people's rent. She'd bought it specifically for tonight, claiming it was an investment in her career. Everything was an investment in her career these days. The hotel lobby buzzed with familiar faces from Nicole's agency. I recognized most of them from previous events. Ambitious 20-somethings in designer knockoffs, middle management types clutching wine glasses like lifelines, and the senior staff who moved through the crowd like sharks. Aaron! Nicole! Tina Martinez, Nicole's supposed best friend, materialized beside us in a cloud of expensive perfume and fake enthusiasm. You both look amazing. Nicole, that dress is to die for. Thanks, T. You look great, too. Nicole's smile was genuine now. She was in her element. Tina turned to me with the kind of smile people reserve for children and small dogs. Aaron, how's the venture capital world treating you? Still playing with other people's money? Something like that. I'd learned years ago that explaining the complexities of my work to Nicole's friends was like teaching calculus to houseplants. Though, technically, I play with my own money these days. Oh, right. Nicole mentioned you started your own firm. Tina's tone suggested this was about as impressive as opening a lemonade stand. What Nicole had apparently failed to mention was that my little firm had just closed a $40 million deal with 3 major tech startups. But then, Nicole had always been selective about which of my achievements made it into her social media posts. Ladies and gentlemen, please make your way to the ballroom for dinner and tonight's presentation. The ballroom was a study in corporate excess. Crystal chandeliers, silk tablecloths, and centerpieces that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Nicole immediately gravitated toward the head table where Victor Morrison held court like a king receiving tribute. Victor Morrison was the kind of man who wore his ego like a designer suit, expensive, obvious, and slightly too tight. At 52, he'd cultivated the look of a successful agency owner, silver hair, expensive watch, and the kind of tan that came from weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard rather than actual work. Nicole, darling, Victor's voice boomed across the table as we approached. And Aaron, how nice to see you again. The pause before nice was subtle but unmistakable. In Victor's world, I was an accessory to Nicole's career, useful for funding her lifestyle, but ultimately irrelevant to the important business of advertising and public relations. Victor, I nodded, taking my seat. Lovely event. Though I have to ask, is the ice sculpture of your company logo really necessary? Seems a bit much for a struggling agency. Nicole's heel found my shin under the table, but Victor just laughed, the kind of laugh that wasn't really amused. Aaron, you venture capital types are all the same. Everything's about the bottom line. Sometimes you have to spend money to make money. Image is everything in this business. Image. I took a sip of wine, a decent Bordeaux that probably cost $300 a bottle. Interesting philosophy. How's that working out for your client retention rates? The temperature at our table dropped about 10 degrees. Nicole's smile became so forced I worried she might pull something. Aaron's just being his analytical self, she said quickly. You know how numbers guys are. Oh, I know exactly how they are. Victor's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. They think they understand business because they can read a spreadsheet. But real business, the kind that builds relationships and creates lasting value, that's an art form. Derek Hoffman, one of Victor's senior associates, leaned forward with the eager expression of a student trying to impress his teacher. Absolutely, anyone can throw money at a problem, but it takes real vision to build something meaningful. Derek was 36, ambitious, and had been circling Nicole like a vulture ever since her promotion to senior account manager. He had the kind of aggressive charm that worked well in sales and poorly in actual human relationships. Vision, I repeated. Is that what we're calling it? I thought it was called burning through investor money while pretending everything's fine. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the conversations at nearby tables seemed to pause. Victor set down his wine glass with deliberate precision. You know, Aaron, I've always wondered what it must be like to be married to someone so much more socially gifted than yourself. Victor. Nicole's voice carried a warning, but he was just getting started. I mean, Nicole is the complete package. Beautiful, intelligent, charming. She lights up every room she enters. Must be intimidating for someone who spends his days alone with spreadsheets and calculators. The other people at our table were watching now, sensing drama like sharks. Tina had her phone out, probably already composing tweets about the unfolding disaster. You're absolutely right, I said, keeping my voice level. Nicole is remarkable, which makes me wonder why she wastes so much time working for someone who treats her like a trophy instead of recognizing her actual talents. Victor's face flushed red. I beg your pardon? Oh, come on, Victor. We all know what this is about. You parade Nicole around at these events, take credit for her work, and act like she should be grateful for the privilege. It's textbook. Aaron, stop. Nicole's voice was sharp, but I was past the point of caring. Victor stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the marble floor. The sound echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. You know what your problem is, Aaron? You don't understand your place. Nicole belongs here, with people who appreciate her. You're just baggage. A necessary evil she tolerates because you pay for her lifestyle. The entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. Is that so? I stood as well, buttoning my jacket with deliberate calm. That's exactly so. Victor's voice grew louder, emboldened by the attention. Nicole is my star employee. She's part of this family, this team. You're just some guy who got lucky with a few investments. He took a step closer, and I could smell the wine on his breath. So here's some free advice, Aaron. Nicole belongs to us during business hours. She's ours. You can wait your turn like a good little husband. And then he did it. Victor Morrison, CEO of Morrison and Associates, spat directly onto my shoe. The glob of saliva landed on my Italian leather Oxford with a wet splat that seemed to echo through the suddenly silent ballroom. Laughter erupted from his table, Derek's braying guffaw, Tina's nervous giggle, and the sycophantic chuckles of various associates who knew which side their bread was buttered on. Nicole sat frozen, her face a mask of horror and embarrassment. I looked down at my shoe, then back up at Victor's smug face. The entire ballroom was watching now, waiting to see how the numbers guy would handle being publicly humiliated by the king of their little kingdom. I smiled. That's interesting, Victor. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. Could you repeat that last part? About Nicole belonging to you? I want to make sure I get the exact wording right. Victor's smile faltered slightly. What are you doing? Oh, just documenting tonight's events. You know how we numbers guys are, we like to keep accurate records. I held up the phone. Now, you were saying something about Nicole being yours? And me waiting my turn? The laughter had died down. People were starting to look uncomfortable. Put that away, Victor said, his voice losing some of its earlier confidence. Why? I thought you were proud of your management philosophy. Surely you wouldn't mind sharing it with a wider audience. I tapped the screen. I'm thinking LinkedIn might be interested. Maybe the Better Business Bureau. Definitely the employment lawyers I have on retainer. Victor's face went from red to pale in about 3 seconds. You're being ridiculous, he stammered. We were just having fun. Guys being guys. Guys being guys. I nodded thoughtfully. Is that what you call spitting on someone's shoe? Because where I come from, we call that assault. I looked around the ballroom, making eye contact with as many people as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for witnessing tonight's display of professional leadership from Victor Morrison. I'm sure you'll all remember this moment when you're deciding which PR agencies to recommend to your friends and colleagues. Victor lunged forward, trying to grab my phone, but I stepped back smoothly. No touching. We've already established that you have boundary issues. Aaron, please. Nicole finally found her voice. Can we just go? Of course, sweetheart. But first... I turned back to Victor, who was standing there like a deer caught in headlights. I have something I want to share with everyone. I pulled out my wallet and extracted a business card, holding it up so the entire room could see. Victor, you mentioned that I'm just some guy who got lucky with a few investments. I thought you might be interested to know that one of those lucky investments was in Morrison and Associates. The color drained from Victor's face completely. That's right, folks. Through my firm, I own a controlling interest in the parent company that funds this little agency, which means, technically speaking, Victor here works for me. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop. So when Victor says Nicole belongs to him, what he really means is that he's been sexually harassing my wife while she's working at a company I own. When he tells me to wait my turn, what he's really saying is that he doesn't understand basic employment law or corporate hierarchy. Victor tried to speak, but only managed a strangled croak. Oh, and Victor, that spit on my shoe, that's going to cost you everything. I turned to Nicole, who was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. Ready to go, honey? I think we've had enough fun for one evening. As we walked toward the exit, the ballroom erupted in whispers and frantic phone conversations. I could hear fragments of conversation. Did you know he owned the company? Oh my God, Victor is so fired. I can't believe he spit on him. In the elevator, Nicole finally spoke. Aaron, what the hell was that? That, I said, watching the numbers count down to the lobby, was me not waiting my turn anymore. I woke up the next morning to the sound of Nicole pacing in our bedroom, her phone pressed to her ear. The digital clock read 6:47 a.m., which meant she'd been up for at least an hour. Nicole never got up before 7 unless there was a crisis. Tina, I don't care what people are saying on social media, she hissed into the phone. We need to control this narrative before it gets completely out of hand. I lay still, listening to her side of the conversation while she assumed I was asleep. No, I had no idea Aaron owned part of the company. Do you think I would have... Of course not. This is a disaster. There was a long pause while Tina presumably offered her wisdom on crisis management. I know Victor was out of line, but Aaron completely humiliated him in front of everyone, and now it's all over Instagram and Twitter. Someone even posted a video. I smiled into my pillow. In the age of smartphones, public meltdowns had a way of going viral. What do you mean? What am I going to do? I'm going to try to save my career. That's what I'm going to do. Another pause. No, I haven't talked to him yet. He's still sleeping, probably dreaming about his big moment of revenge. She wasn't wrong about that. Nicole ended the call, and I heard her footsteps heading toward the bathroom. The shower started running, giving me a few minutes to check my own phone. 17 missed calls from Jamie Chen, my assistant, and the closest thing I had to a best friend. Jamie was 28, brilliant with technology, and had the kind of dry sense of humor that made working 12-hour days bearable. I called her back. Jesus Christ, Aaron, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you all night. Jamie's voice was excited and slightly breathless. Good morning to you, too. I take it you heard about last night. Heard about it? Dude, I watched it. Someone live-streamed the whole thing on Instagram. It's got like 50,000 views already. I sat up in bed. 50,000? And climbing. The hashtag Spitgate is trending locally, but that's not why I've been calling. Okay, I'm listening. I did some digging into Morrison and Associates after you texted me last night. Aaron, that company is in serious trouble. Like, bankruptcy-level trouble. This was interesting. How serious? They've missed 3 payments to creditors in the past 6 months. Victor's been cooking the books, moving money between accounts to make it look like they're solvent. They owe about $2 million in unpaid bills. I walked to the window overlooking our street. It was a beautiful morning, the kind of crisp October day that made you grateful to be alive. What about employee salaries? That's the really ugly part. They've been deferring payments to staff for months, claiming it's temporary cash flow issues. But the senior management, Victor, Derek, and a few others, they've been paying themselves bonuses while everyone else gets IOUs. Including Nicole? Nicole's been getting paid. In fact, she got a $15,000 bonus last month that wasn't reported to the other employees. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Are you sure? I'm looking at the bank records right now. Aaron, I think Nicole knows exactly how bad things are. She's been in on it. The shower was still running. I had maybe 5 more minutes before Nicole emerged. Jamie, I need you to pull together a complete financial analysis of Morrison and Associates. Every account, every transaction, every unpaid bill. Can you have it ready by noon? Already working on it. But Aaron, there's something else you need to know. What? Victor's been in talks with a buyer. Some big agency out of New York wants to acquire Morrison and Associates, but only if they can clean up their reputation and finances first. The deal's worth about $10 million. Let me guess. Victor and his inner circle would walk away with most of that money while the regular employees get nothing? Bingo. And Aaron, Nicole's name is on the acquisition documents as a key executive who would be retained after the sale. I closed my eyes. Send me everything you have. And Jamie, start preparing termination paperwork for Victor Morrison. I want him gone by end of business today. With pleasure. Oh, and Aaron, you might want to check Nicole's email. I may have accidentally gained access to her work account while researching the company finances. Accidentally? Hey, security vulnerabilities happen. Not my fault if people use weak passwords. After hanging up, I sat on the edge of our bed and tried to process what I'd learned. Nicole hadn't just been a victim of Victor's harassment. She'd been complicit in the company's financial fraud. The bonus, the acquisition deal, her name on the retention list, it all painted a picture of someone who knew exactly what was happening and had chosen to benefit from it rather than speak up. The shower stopped running. I quickly got dressed and headed downstairs to make coffee, needing a few more minutes to think before confronting Nicole. Our kitchen was a showcase of granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, the kind of space that looked great in magazine photos, but always felt cold to me. Nicole appeared 15 minutes later, dressed in her armor of choice, a perfectly tailored business suit, flawless makeup, and the kind of confident stride that had first attracted me to her 8 years ago. "Good morning," she said, pouring herself coffee. "We need to talk about last night." I figured we might. She sat across from me at our breakfast bar, her hands wrapped around her mug like she was trying to draw warmth from it. "Aaron, what you did to Victor was completely inappropriate. I understand you were angry, but you humiliated him in front of the entire agency. These are people I have to work with every day." "Had to work with," I corrected. "I'm not sure Victor's going to be in a position to employ anyone much longer." Her eyes flashed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I know about the financial problems at Morrison and Associates. The missed payments, the cooked books, the fact that Victor's been stealing from his own employees while paying himself bonuses." Nicole's face went carefully neutral, her poker face, the one she used during difficult negotiations. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really? So you don't know about the $15,000 bonus you received last month while other employees weren't getting their regular salaries?" She set down her coffee mug with shaking hands. "How do you—" "Aaron, you can't just hack into company records. That's illegal. Actually, as a majority shareholder in the parent company, I have every right to examine the books. And what I found is very interesting." I pulled out my phone and opened the email Jamie had sent me an hour earlier. For instance, there's this email from you to Victor dated 3 weeks ago. Quote, "The acquisition talks are moving forward, but we need to make sure the financial irregularities don't surface during due diligence. Can you move the outstanding payroll liabilities to the subsidiary account?" End quote. Nicole's face had gone pale. "Aaron, I can explain—" "Oh, there's more. Here's another one from Derek to you. Nicole, baby, can't wait to celebrate the New York deal. Just think, $10 million and a fresh start for both of us. Victor won't know what hit him." And your response? "Soon, D. Just have to keep Aaron in the dark a little longer." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Nicole stared at her hands, unable to meet my eyes. "How long?" I asked quietly. "How long what?" "How long have you been sleeping with Derek? How long have you known about the fraud? How long have you been planning to leave me for $10 million and a fresh start?" When she finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes, but I couldn't tell if they were real or another performance. "Aaron, it's not what you think. Derek and I, it just happened. And the company issues, I was trying to protect everyone's jobs. If the agency goes under, dozens of people lose their livelihoods. So you decided to steal from them instead?" "We weren't stealing. We were managing cash flow until the acquisition could go through. Everyone would have gotten paid eventually." "Everyone except the employees who weren't in on the scam." Nicole stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under. Victor's been impossible to work with, the clients have been demanding, and you've been so focused on your own business that you barely notice I exist anymore. So, you decided to have an affair and commit fraud. That's your solution to work stress? It wasn't supposed to happen like this." Her voice rose to near shouting. "Derek understands my career in a way you never have. He sees my potential, supports my ambitions. And yes, we fell in love. I'm sorry if that hurts you, but I can't help how I feel." "Love." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Nicole, Derek is using you. He's been feeding you lines about your potential and your career because he knows you'll help him steal money and cover up Victor's crimes. The moment this acquisition falls through, which it will, by the way, he'll throw you under the bus so fast your head will spin." "That's not true. Derek cares about me." "Derek cares about $10 million. You're just a means to an end." My phone buzzed with a text from Jamie. "Termination meeting set for 2 p.m. Victor doesn't know yet. Also, you need to see the news." I turned on the kitchen TV and flipped to the local news station. The anchor was just finishing a story about a water main break downtown when the screen switched to a familiar face. In business news, Morrison and Associates, one of the city's most prominent public relations firms, is facing serious questions this morning after a video of CEO Victor Morrison's behavior at last night's company gala went viral on social media. The screen showed a clip from someone's phone, Victor spitting on my shoe, his drunken rant about Nicole belonging to him, and my calm response about owning the company. The video quality was surprisingly good. The incident has sparked discussions about workplace harassment and corporate accountability. We've reached out to Morrison and Associates for comment but have not received a response. Nicole sank back into her chair, staring at the TV in horror. "This is a disaster," she whispered. "No," I said, turning off the television. "This is justice." My phone rang. Jamie again. "Aaron, you need to get down here right now. There are reporters outside the Morrison and Associates building, and Victor just showed up drunk. He's giving interviews." "What kind of interviews?" "The kind where he's blaming you for everything and claiming you seduced Nicole away from him." "Oh, and he just accused you of corporate espionage and financial manipulation." I looked at Nicole, who was listening to my side of the conversation with growing panic. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. And Jamie, call our lawyers, all of them." After hanging up, I grabbed my jacket and keys. "Where are you going?" Nicole asked. "To clean up the mess your boyfriend and your boss have made. And Nicole, when I get back, I want you gone." "Aaron, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling, figure out how to move forward. I made mistakes, but our marriage is worth fighting for." I paused at the kitchen doorway and looked back at her. She was beautiful, successful, and everything I'd thought I wanted when I married her. But sitting there in our expensive kitchen, pleading for a second chance while the evidence of her betrayal played on the morning news, she looked like a stranger. "Our marriage ended the moment you decided to steal from your coworkers and sleep with Derek. Everything that happens now is just paperwork. You can't just throw away 8 years because of one mistake." "One mistake?" I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the emails Jamie had forwarded. "Nicole, I have 6 months of correspondence between you and Derek. Romantic messages, financial planning, discussions about leaving me. This wasn't one mistake. It was a systematic betrayal of everything we built together." She started crying then, real tears this time, not the calculated kind she used during negotiations. "Aaron, I'm sorry. I know I screwed up, but I love you. I've always loved you. Derek was he was an escape from all the pressure and stress. It didn't mean anything. It meant everything. It meant you were willing to risk our marriage, your career, and other people's livelihoods for a fantasy about a fresh start with $10 million. I opened the front door, then turned back one more time. "Nicole, I gave you 8 years of my life. I supported your career, funded your dreams, and loved you unconditionally. In return, you stole from your coworkers, cheated on our marriage, and planned to leave me for a man who sees you as a useful idiot. The worst part is that you're actually talented enough to have succeeded without any of this. You could have built something real, something lasting. Instead, you chose to be a supporting character in someone else's con game." I walked out and closed the door behind me, leaving Nicole alone with her coffee and her tears and the wreckage of the life she'd chosen to destroy. The scene outside Morrison and Associates looked like something from a disaster movie. News vans lined the street, reporters clutched microphones and notepads, and a crowd of curious onlookers had gathered to watch the spectacle unfold. In the center of it all stood Victor Morrison, swaying slightly as he gestured wildly at the cameras. Even from across the street, I could tell he was still drunk from the night before. "Complete setup from the beginning," Victor was saying as I approached. "Aaron Kellerman has been planning this hostile takeover for months. He seduced my employee, manipulated our finances, and now he's trying to destroy everything I've built. A reporter thrust a microphone toward him. Mr. Morrison, can you comment on the video from last night's gala, specifically your statement that Ms. Kellerman belongs to you? Victor's face flushed red. That was taken completely out of context. Nicole and I have a professional relationship based on mutual respect and admiration. Aaron Kellerman is a jealous husband who can't stand that his wife is more successful than he is. I pulled out my phone and started recording. If Victor wanted to give interviews, I was going to make sure I had my own copy of everything he said. Mr. Morrison, another reporter called out, sources tell us that Morrison and Associates is facing serious financial difficulties. Can you comment on reports of unpaid employee salaries and missing client funds? Lies. All lies spread by Aaron Kellerman and his corporate raiders. Morrison and Associates is financially sound and has been for 15 years. We're actually in talks for a major expansion that will create dozens of new jobs. That's when I decided to make my entrance. Excuse me, I said, walking up to the cluster of reporters. I'm Aaron Kellerman. I believe Mr. Morrison has been talking about me. The effect was immediate. Cameras swung in my direction, reporters shouted questions, and Victor's face went from red to purple. You! Victor pointed at me with a shaking finger. You destroyed everything! You manipulated my employee, hacked our computers, and now you're trying to steal my company. Actually, Victor, I already own your company. Have for about 6 months now. I'm just deciding what to do with it. A reporter stepped forward. Mr. Kellerman, can you explain your relationship to Morrison and Associates? Certainly. Through my investment firm, I hold a controlling interest in the parent company that provides funding to Morrison and Associates. Mr. Morrison here is essentially my employee, though he seems to have forgotten that fact. That's a lie, Victor shouted. I built this company from nothing. It's mine. I pulled out a folder Jamie had prepared for me. I have the incorporation documents right here if anyone would like to see them. Morrison and Associates is a wholly owned subsidiary of Harbor Capital Holdings, which is owned by my firm. Mr. Morrison is listed as the operating manager, not the owner. The reporters were scribbling frantically. This was turning into a much bigger story than a simple workplace harassment incident. Mr. Kellerman, a young woman from Channel 7 asked, what are your plans for the agency now? Well, first I'm going to conduct a thorough audit of the company's finances. Based on preliminary investigations, it appears there have been some irregularities in how employee salaries and client funds have been managed. Victor lunged toward me, but 2 security guards from the building stepped between us. You can't do this, he screamed. I have contracts. I have rights. Actually, you don't. I opened the folder and pulled out a document. This is a termination notice, effective immediately. You're fired, Victor. Security will escort you to clean out your office. The crowd of reporters erupted in questions, but I held up my hand for silence. I want to be very clear about something. The employees of Morrison and Associates, the account managers, the creative staff, the administrative personnel, they are not responsible for their management's failures. My goal is to stabilize the company, pay all outstanding salaries, and ensure that these talented professionals can continue their careers without interruption. What about the allegations of harassment? Someone called out. Those allegations will be investigated thoroughly by both internal auditors and external legal counsel. Anyone who has engaged in harassment, fraud, or other illegal activities will be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. Victor was being led away by security, still shouting threats and accusations. I watched him go with a mixture of satisfaction and pity. He'd built something real once. Morrison and Associates had been a legitimate business before greed and ego corrupted it. Now he was just a cautionary tale about what happened when you forgot that other people weren't your property. Mr. Kellerman, the Channel 7 reporter asked, what about your wife? She's an employee of Morrison and Associates. Will she be affected by these changes? I paused, choosing my words carefully. My wife's employment status will be determined by the same standards applied to all employees: professional competence, ethical behavior, and legal compliance. Nothing more, nothing less. After the reporters dispersed, I made my way into the building. The Morrison and Associates office occupied the entire 15th floor of a downtown high-rise with glass walls, modern furniture, and the kind of open-plan design that looked great in architectural magazines, but made actual work nearly impossible. Jamie was waiting for me in what used to be Victor's office, surrounded by boxes of documents and looking like a kid on Christmas morning. "This is better than I expected," she said, gesturing to the papers scattered across the desk. "Aaron, these people weren't just cooking the books. They were running a full-scale Ponzi scheme." "How bad is it?" "They owe employees about $400,000 in back pay and benefits. Client funds totaling nearly $1 million have been borrowed for operational expenses. And the acquisition deal? It was never real. Derek made up the whole thing to keep Nicole interested in the affair." I sat down heavily in Victor's leather chair. "Derek made it up? The New York agency he claimed was buying Morrison and Associates? It doesn't exist. Derek created fake emails, fake contracts, even a fake website. He's been stringing Nicole along for months with promises of a $10 million payday that was never going to happen." "Why would he do that?" Jamie pulled up something on her laptop. "Because Derek's been embezzling money from client accounts, about $600,000 so far. He needed Nicole's access to the financial systems to cover his tracks, and he needed her to believe they had a future together to keep her cooperative." So Nicole was being used. "Completely. Derek's been planning to disappear with the money all along. Nicole was just a useful idiot who happened to be married to someone with enough money to bail out the company if things went wrong." I stared out the window at the city skyline, trying to process the full scope of the betrayal. Nicole hadn't just cheated on our marriage. She'd been manipulated into destroying her own career by someone who saw her as nothing more than a mark in a con game. "Where is Derek now?" "That's the interesting part. He cleaned out his office this morning and hasn't been seen since. His apartment is empty, his car is gone, and his bank accounts have been drained. He ran. Like a rabbit. Left Nicole holding the bag for all of it." My phone buzzed with a text message from Nicole. "Aaron, please call me. Derek is gone and I don't understand what's happening. I need help." I showed the message to Jamie, who rolled her eyes. "Are you going to respond?" I thought about it for a long moment. Nicole had betrayed our marriage, stolen from her co-workers, and planned to leave me for a man who turned out to be a criminal. But she'd also been victimized by someone who exploited her ambitions and insecurities for his own gain. "Not yet," I said finally. "First, I want to talk to the other employees. They deserve to know what's been happening and what we're going to do about it." Jamie had arranged for a company-wide meeting in the main conference room. As I walked through the office, I could feel the tension in the air. Employees huddled in small groups, whispering nervously and glancing at their phones. Everyone knew something major was happening, but no one was sure what it meant for their jobs. The conference room was packed. I recognized most of the faces from previous company events. Young account executives, creative directors, administrative staff, and the middle management types who kept the agency running day to day. These were good people who'd been caught up in their leadership's failures. "Good afternoon, everyone," I said, standing at the head of the table. "I know this has been a confusing and stressful day, so I want to be as transparent as possible about what's happening." I spent the next 30 minutes explaining the financial situation, Victor's termination, and Derek's disappearance. I watched their faces as the full scope of the crisis became clear. Anger, fear, disappointment, and relief all mixed together. "The good news," I continued, "is that Morrison and Associates will continue operating. All outstanding salaries will be paid within the next week, client accounts will be secured, and we'll be hiring new management to replace the people who created this mess." A hand shot up from the back of the room. "What about Nicole Kellerman? Is she going to be the new manager?" The room fell silent. Everyone knew about my marriage to Nicole, and everyone had heard the rumors about her relationship with Derek. Nicole's employment status is under review, like everyone else who was involved in the financial irregularities. No one gets special treatment, positive or negative, because of their personal relationship to me. Another hand. Are we going to be investigated? I mean, some of us knew things weren't right, but we didn't know how to report it without losing our jobs. Anyone who was aware of illegal activities and failed to report them will need to explain their actions to our legal team. But I want to be clear. I understand the pressure you were under. Victor and Derek created an environment where speaking up felt dangerous. That's going to change. The meeting lasted another hour, with employees asking questions about job security, client relationships, and the company's future. By the end, the mood had shifted from panic to cautious optimism. These people were professionals who wanted to do good work. They just needed leadership that wouldn't exploit their loyalty. After everyone left, I sat alone in the conference room and finally called Nicole back. "Aaron, thank God," she answered on the first ring. "I've been trying to reach Derek all day, but his phone goes straight to voicemail. Do you know where he is?" "Derek's gone, Nicole. He emptied his bank accounts and disappeared sometime this morning." Silence. That's not possible. We had plans, the acquisition, the move to New York, everything we talked about. There was no acquisition. Derek made it all up. The New York agency, the $10 million deal, all of it was fake. I could hear her breathing, but she didn't say anything. "Nicole, Derek was embezzling money from client accounts. He used your access to the financial systems to cover his tracks, and he kept you interested in the affair by promising you a future that never existed." "No." Her voice was small, broken. "No, that's not... Aaron, you're lying. You're just trying to hurt me because of what happened between us." "I wish I was lying. But Derek stole $600,000 from your clients and left you to take the blame. He never cared about you, Nicole. You were just useful to him." The silence stretched on for so long I thought she might have hung up. "Nicole, are you there?" "I gave up everything for him." Her voice was barely a whisper. "My marriage, my reputation, my career. I thought he loved me." "I know. Aaron, I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I never meant for any of this to happen. I thought Derek was offering me something real, something better than what we had." "What we had was real, Nicole. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Derek offered you a fantasy. Is there any way we can work through this? I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I love you. I've always loved you, even when I was too stupid to see what I was throwing away." I looked out the conference room window at the city below. Somewhere out there, Derek was probably planning his next con, his next victim. Victor was likely drowning his sorrows and plotting his revenge, and Nicole was sitting in our house, finally understanding the full cost of the choices she'd made. "Nicole, I need you to come in tomorrow morning to meet with our legal team. You're going to have to answer questions about your involvement in the financial fraud, and there may be criminal charges depending on what they find." "Am I going to prison?" "I don't know. That depends on how cooperative you are and what role you played in Derek's schemes." "And us? Is there any chance for us?" I closed my eyes and thought about the woman I'd married 8 years ago. Brilliant, ambitious, beautiful, and full of dreams about the life we'd build together. That woman was still there, buried under layers of poor choices and manipulated by a man who saw her as nothing more than a useful tool. But she was also the woman who'd chosen to betray our marriage, steal from her co-workers, and plan to leave me for a promise of easy money. I don't know, Nicole. I honestly don't know. 3 days later, I was in my office reviewing the final audit reports when Jamie burst through the door with the kind of expression that meant either very good news or very bad news. "Aaron, you need to see this right now." She handed me her tablet, which was displaying what looked like a social media post. The profile picture showed Derek Hoffman on a beach somewhere tropical, wearing sunglasses and holding a drink with a little umbrella in it. "That son of a bitch," I muttered, reading the caption. "Sometimes you have to leave everything behind to find yourself. Living my best life in paradise. New beginnings. Fresh start. Living the dream." "It gets worse," Jamie said, swiping to the next post. "He's been taunting Nicole." The second post was a photo of an expensive-looking resort room with a caption that made me freeze. "Thanks to all the little people who made this possible. Some dreams are worth any sacrifice. Special thanks to NK for being so helpful." When did he post these? About an hour ago. But Aaron, there's something else. I've been tracking his financial movements, and he didn't just steal $600,000 from Morrison and Associates. Jamie pulled up a spreadsheet on her laptop. "Derek's been running this same con for years. He gets involved with women who have access to company finances, manipulates them into helping him embezzle money, then disappears when things get too hot." "How many times?" "At least 4 that I can find. Always the same pattern. He targets ambitious women in relationships with wealthy men, promises them a better life, gets them to help him steal money, then vanishes. The women get blamed for the theft while Derek moves on to his next victim." I stared at the photos of Derek living it up in what looked like the Bahamas, spending money he'd stolen while Nicole faced potential criminal charges back home. "Where is he exactly?" "Nassau, the Atlantis resort. He's not even trying to hide. Probably figures he's safe in the Bahamas. No extradition treaty for financial crimes under a certain threshold." "Actually," Jamie said with a smile that reminded me why I'd hired her, "that's where he made his mistake. Derek didn't just steal from Morrison and Associates. He also embezzled money from a client account that belonged to a federal contractor. That makes it a federal crime, and the FBI has jurisdiction." "You called the FBI?" "I called my friend Marcus at the Bureau. He's very interested in Derek's travel patterns and financial activities. Apparently they've been looking for someone matching his description in connection with similar crimes in 3 other states." My phone rang. "Nicole." "Aaron, have you seen Derek's social media posts?" "I'm looking at them now. He's mocking me, making it sound like I was his accomplice instead of—" Her voice broke. "Everyone's going to think I was in on it from the beginning." "Nicole, where are you right now?" "At home. I've been going through everything, trying to figure out how I missed all the signs." "Aaron, he played me perfectly. Every insecurity I had about my career, my marriage, my future, he knew exactly what to say." "I know. And I'm sorry that happened to you." "Are you? Really? Because part of me thinks you're enjoying watching me get what I deserve." I considered that for a moment. Was I enjoying Nicole's pain? There was definitely satisfaction in seeing Derek exposed for what he really was, and in watching the fantasy Nicole had chosen over our marriage crumble into nothing. But seeing her genuinely hurt and humiliated didn't feel as good as I'd expected. "Nicole, what Derek did to you was wrong. You made bad choices, but you didn't deserve to be manipulated and used like that. The FBI wants to interview me tomorrow. They think I might have information about Derek's other crimes." "Do you?" "I don't know. Maybe. He talked about other jobs he'd had, other women he'd worked with. I thought he was just sharing his past, but now I'm wondering if he was bragging about his cons." Jamie was making urgent hand gestures at me. I put Nicole on speaker. "Nicole, this is important. Did Derek ever mention specific names or companies from his previous jobs?" Yes. There was a marketing firm in Atlanta called Prestige Communications. He said he'd had a relationship with a woman there named Sarah something, and before that, a real estate company in Miami where he'd worked with someone called Jennifer." Jamie was already typing furiously on her laptop. "What about financial details? Did he ever talk about how much money he'd made from these jobs?" "He said the Miami job had been his biggest score, something like $800,000. But Aaron, why are you asking me this?" Jamie held up her laptop screen. which showed FBI wanted posters for Derek in connection with embezzlement cases in Georgia, Florida, and Texas. The total amount stolen was over $3 million. Nicole, Derek isn't just a cheating boyfriend who stole some money from your company. He's a career criminal who's been running this same con across multiple states. You're not his victim. You're his latest victim. Oh my God. The information you have about his previous crimes could be crucial to the FBI's case. You need to tell them everything you remember about what Derek told you. After hanging up with Nicole, I sat back in my chair and tried to process everything we'd learned. Derek was a professional con artist who'd targeted my wife as part of a multi-state crime spree. Nicole had been unfaithful and made terrible decisions, but she'd also been systematically manipulated by someone who made a living exploiting women's ambitions and insecurities. Jamie, I want you to book us flights to Nassau. Aaron, what are you thinking? I'm thinking Derek made one crucial mistake. He assumed I'd be content to let the FBI handle this through official channels. But Derek humiliated my wife, stole from my company, and is now posting photos of himself spending stolen money while Nicole faces criminal charges. So what's the plan? Derek wants to play games on social media? Fine. Let's give him a game he'll never forget. I spent the next 2 hours planning what I privately called Operation Payback. Derek thought he was safe in the Bahamas, beyond the reach of American law enforcement. He was wrong about that. The FBI was already working with Bahamian authorities to have him arrested and extradited. But that could take weeks or months, and in the meantime, Derek was living it up on stolen money while his victims suffered. I had a better idea. Jamie, I need you to create some fake social media accounts. Make them look like wealthy tourists who are impressed by Derek's lifestyle posts. You want to catfish him? I want to make him think he's found his next marks, rich, gullible tourists with more money than sense. Jamie's eyes lit up with understanding. And once he takes the bait, then we spring the trap. We spent the evening crafting the perfect fake personas. Jamie created accounts for Richard and Patricia Worthington, a retired couple from Greenwich, Connecticut, who'd made their fortune in tech investments and were now traveling the world spending their money. The profiles were complete with photos, stock images of attractive older people, detailed backstories, and the kind of casual mentions of wealth that would attract someone like Derek. The next morning, Patricia Worthington commented on one of Derek's beach photos. What a beautiful resort. My husband and I are thinking of visiting Nassau next month. Any recommendations for someone who knows the area? Derek took the bait within hours. His direct message to Patricia was a masterpiece of calculated charm. I'd be happy to show you and your husband around. I've been here for a few weeks and I know all the best spots. Are you staying at Atlantis too? Over the next few days, Jamie maintained the conversation, gradually revealing more details about the Worthingtons' wealth and their interest in investment opportunities in the Caribbean. Derek, predictably, mentioned that he was a financial consultant who specialized in helping wealthy clients diversify their portfolios. He's following the exact same script he used on Nicole, Jamie observed as we read his latest messages. The only difference is the setting. Good. That means he's predictable. On Thursday, Derek suggested meeting the Worthingtons for dinner at the resort's most expensive restaurant. Patricia eagerly accepted, mentioning that she and her husband were arriving in Nassau the next day. That's when I made my own flight reservations. Friday morning, I landed in Nassau, carrying a briefcase full of documents and a carefully planned script for the most satisfying confrontation of my life. Derek thought he was meeting wealthy tourists who might become his next victims. Instead, he was about to come face to face with the husband of his last victim and learn that some people don't forgive and forget. The Atlantis resort was exactly the kind of ostentatious display Derek would choose. Massive aquariums, gold-plated everything, and the sort of luxury that impressed people who'd never had real money. I checked into a suite under the name Richard Worthington and sent Derek a message confirming our dinner reservation. At 7 p.m. sharp, I walked into the resort's signature restaurant, wearing my best suit and carrying a leather portfolio that I hoped looked like investment documents. Derek was already there, sitting at a prime table and clearly dressed to impress in what looked like a new designer outfit bought with stolen money. He stood up as I approached, extending his hand with the kind of confident smile that had probably charmed dozens of victims over the years. "Mr. Worthington, so good to finally meet you in person. I'm Derek Hoffman." "Actually," I said, ignoring his outstretched hand, "you know exactly who I am." The smile faltered as recognition dawned in his eyes. "Aaron, what the hell are you doing here?" "Collecting what you stole and making sure you understand exactly what kind of man you really are." Derek looked around the restaurant nervously, probably calculating his chances of making it to the exit before I could stop him. "Sit down, Derek. We have a lot to discuss. I don't have to listen to anything you— Yes, you do. Because if you try to leave, the FBI agents waiting in the lobby will arrest you before you make it to the elevator." That was a bluff. The FBI was still working through diplomatic channels, but Derek didn't know that. He sat down heavily, his face pale. "What do you want?" I opened my portfolio and pulled out a thick stack of documents. "I want you to understand what you've done, not just to Nicole, not just to Morrison and Associates, but to all your victims over the years." I slid the first document across the table. It was a photo of Sarah Martinez, the woman Derek had conned in Atlanta. "Sarah lost her job, her savings, and her marriage because of you. She's been working 2 jobs for the past year trying to pay back the money you stole." Derek glanced at the photo but didn't say anything. The next document was a police report from Miami. "Jennifer Walsh attempted suicide after you disappeared with her company's payroll. She survived, but she's still in therapy, dealing with the trauma of being manipulated and abandoned by someone she trusted. Look, Aaron, I know you're angry about Nicole, but I'm not finished." I pulled out a financial statement showing Derek's bank transactions over the past 3 years. $3.2 million. That's how much you've stolen from women who thought you cared about them. Money that belonged to their companies, their co-workers, their clients. People lost their jobs, their homes, their futures because of your greed. Derek was sweating now, despite the restaurant's air conditioning. "And Nicole," I continued, sliding her photo across the table. "You convinced her to betray everything she'd worked for, everything we'd built together, for a fantasy that never existed. She's facing federal charges because of you, while you're here posting pictures of yourself spending her co-workers' money." "She made her own choices," Derek said defensively. "I never forced her to do anything." "You're right. She did make choices. But you manipulated those choices by exploiting her insecurities and feeding her lies about a future you never intended to provide." I leaned back in my chair and studied Derek's face. He looked like what he was, a small-time con artist who'd gotten in over his head and was finally facing consequences for his actions. "Here's what's going to happen, Derek. You're going to transfer every penny you stole back to the accounts you took it from. You're going to provide the FBI with detailed information about all your crimes, and you're going to personally apologize to every woman you've victimized." Derek laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Or what? You'll have me arrested? Aaron, I'm in the Bahamas. American law enforcement can't touch me here." "Actually, they can. Financial crimes involving federal contractors fall under international treaty obligations. The Bahamian authorities are very cooperative when it comes to extraditing criminals who've stolen American money." I pulled out my phone and showed Derek a text message from Jamie. "FBI coordination complete. Local authorities standing by." "But here's the thing, Derek. I don't want to wait for the legal system to run its course. I want justice now." "What kind of justice?" I smiled and pulled out the final document from my portfolio, a contract. "You're going to sign this agreement to repay every dollar you've stolen with interest. You're going to liquidate all your assets and turn the proceeds over to a victim compensation fund. And you're going to spend the next 5 years working for minimum wage at a job I'll arrange for you, with all your earnings above basic living expenses going to pay back your victims. That's insane. I'll never agree to that. Then you'll spend the next 20 years in federal prison. Your choice. Derek stared at the contract for a long moment. And if I sign this, what happens to the criminal charges? The victims will have the option to pursue reduced charges in exchange for full restitution. Some of them might be willing to accept financial compensation instead of seeing you in prison. Others might not. This is extortion. No, Derek, this is justice. Extortion would be if I threatened to hurt you unless you paid me money. I'm offering you a chance to make things right with the people you've wronged. Derek read through the contract carefully, probably looking for loopholes or escape clauses. Jamie had written it, and she was thorough. What about Nicole? What happens to her if I sign this? Nicole will face whatever consequences are appropriate for her actions. But if you provide testimony that she was manipulated rather than a willing accomplice, that might influence how she's treated by prosecutors. Derek was quiet for several minutes, weighing his options. Finally, he looked up at me with something that might have been respect. You know, Aaron, I underestimated you. I thought you were just another rich guy who'd gotten lucky in business. I didn't realize you were actually smart. Smart enough to track you down and make you pay for what you've done. Derek signed the contract. As I watched him write his name on the document that would force him to spend the next 5 years making amends for his crimes, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction, but a kind of closure. Derek would face justice, his victims would be compensated, and Nicole would have a chance to rebuild her life without the shadow of his manipulation hanging over her. One more thing, Derek. He looked up from the contract. Delete those social media posts. All of them. The photos, the comments about Nicole, everything. And if you ever contact her again, or any of your other victims, the deal is off and you go straight to prison. Derek nodded and pulled out his phone. I watched as he deleted every post from his Nassau vacation, erasing the evidence of his stolen luxury. There's a flight to Miami leaving in 3 hours, I said, standing up from the table. You'll be on it. FBI agents will meet you at the airport to escort you back to face charges. And the money? Will be transferred back to the Victim Compensation Fund within 24 hours. Jamie's already prepared the paperwork. As I walked away from the table, Derek called out one last question. Aaron, why didn't you just let the FBI handle this? Why go to all this trouble? I turned back to look at him. This small, pathetic man who'd caused so much pain for so many people. Because some people need to learn that actions have consequences. And because my wife deserved better than to be just another mark in your con game. I returned from Nassau to find that word of Derek's capture had spread through the local business community like wildfire. The story had everything people loved: romance, betrayal, international intrigue, and a satisfying comeuppance for the villain. Local news stations were calling it the social media sting, and my phone hadn't stopped ringing with interview requests. Jamie met me at the airport with a stack of newspapers and a grin that could have lit up the entire terminal. Aaron, you're famous. Look at this. She held up the business section of the morning paper, which featured a photo of me leaving the FBI field office with the headline, Local Businessman Helps Capture International Con Artist. Please tell me they didn't use the photo from the gala. Oh, they used that too. But mostly, they're focusing on how you tracked Derek down and convinced him to return the stolen money. The FBI is calling it an unprecedented example of private-public cooperation in international financial crimes. As we drove back toward downtown, Jamie filled me in on everything that had happened while I was gone. Victor's been arrested for embezzlement and fraud. Turns out he was stealing money long before Derek showed up. Derek just gave him a convenient scapegoat. The district attorney thinks Victor might have been planning to blame everything on Derek and Nicole when the company finally collapsed. What about Nicole? She's been cooperating fully with the FBI investigation. Her testimony about Derek's methods and his previous crimes has been crucial to building cases against him in other states. The prosecutors are recommending reduced charges in exchange for her cooperation. Reduced how much? Probably probation instead of prison time, assuming she continues to cooperate and makes full restitution for any money she helped Derek steal. We pulled up to my office building where a small crowd of reporters was waiting. I'd been avoiding media interviews since returning from Nassau, but it was clear that strategy wasn't sustainable. "Mr. Kellerman!" A reporter from Channel 7 thrust a microphone toward me as I got out of the car. "Can you comment on Derek Hoffman's arrest? How did you know he was in the Bahamas?" Mr. Hoffman made the mistake of posting his location on social media while taunting his victims. It wasn't difficult to track him down. "Is it true that you personally confronted him at his hotel?" I had a conversation with Mr. Hoffman about the consequences of his actions. He decided that cooperation was in his best interest. Another reporter jumped in. "What about your wife's involvement in the embezzlement scheme? Are you standing by her?" That was the question I'd been dreading. Nicole and I hadn't spoken since I'd returned from Nassau, though she'd sent several text messages asking if we could meet. I wasn't sure what I wanted to say to her, much less what I wanted to say to the media about our relationship. My wife was victimized by a professional con artist who exploited her trust and manipulated her into making decisions she now regrets. The legal system will determine what consequences are appropriate for her actions. "But what about your marriage? Are you getting divorced?" "That's a private matter that my wife and I will resolve between ourselves." I pushed through the crowd and made it into the building, but the reporter's question echoed in my mind as I rode the elevator to my office. Was I getting divorced? 2 weeks ago, the answer would have been an automatic yes. Nicole had cheated on our marriage, stolen from her coworkers, and planned to leave me for another man. Those weren't the kind of betrayals you forgave and forgot. But learning about Derek's history of manipulation had complicated my feelings. Nicole hadn't just woken up one morning and decided to destroy our marriage. She'd been systematically targeted by someone who made a living exploiting women's vulnerabilities. That didn't excuse her choices, but it did provide context for them. My phone buzzed with a text from Nicole. "Aaron, I know you're probably tired of hearing from me, but I need to tell you something important. Can we meet? Please?" I stared at the message for several minutes before responding. My office, 6 p.m. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings, phone calls, and paperwork related to the Morrison and Associates restructuring. The company was actually in better shape than I'd expected. Once we removed the stolen money and inflated expenses from the books, it showed a modest profit. With new management and a cleaned-up reputation, it might actually become a successful business again. At exactly 6 o'clock, Nicole knocked on my office door. She looked different than she had 2 weeks ago, thinner, tired, and wearing the kind of conservative business suit that suggested she was taking her legal troubles seriously. But there was also something in her posture that I hadn't seen in years, a kind of straightforward honesty that reminded me of the woman I'd married. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," she said, taking a seat across from my desk. "You said you had something important to tell me." Nicole took a deep breath. "I've been going through everything, all my communications with Derek, all the financial records, all the decisions I made over the past year. And I realized something that I need you to understand." "I'm listening." "Derek didn't just manipulate me into the affair and the embezzlement. He manipulated me into destroying our marriage." She pulled out a folder and set it on my desk. "These are printouts of text messages between Derek and me going back 8 months. Look at the dates, Aaron. He started flirting with me right after you announced your plans to expand your investment firm." I opened the folder and scanned the messages. Nicole was right. Derek's initial contact had come just days after I'd told her about my plans to acquire several smaller companies, including Morrison and Associates. "Derek researched you before he targeted me," Nicole continued. He knew about your business, your investments, your plans for expansion. He specifically chose me because I was married to someone who could bail out Morrison and Associates if his embezzlement was discovered. You think he planned the whole thing? I think Derek is smarter and more calculating than any of us realized. He didn't just want to steal money from Morrison and Associates. He wanted to steal money and have a wealthy husband as backup in case things went wrong. Nicole pulled out another document, a bank statement showing large cash deposits into Derek's account. Derek was also being paid by Victor, $20,000 a month for the past 6 months. I think Victor hired him to seduce me and get access to your money. I studied the bank statement. The deposits were regular and substantial, far more than Derek could have earned from his legitimate salary at Morrison and Associates. Victor was planning to steal from you all along, Nicole said. Derek was just the method. I was just the tool they used to get access to your finances. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand that while I made terrible choices, I didn't make them in a vacuum. I was being manipulated by professionals who saw our marriage as an obstacle to their criminal plans. Nicole leaned forward in her chair. Aaron, I cheated on you. I stole from my co-workers. I planned to leave you for promises that turned out to be lies. I take full responsibility for those choices, and I understand if you can never forgive me for them. But I also want you to know that the woman who made those choices wasn't entirely me. Derek spent months undermining my confidence in our marriage, convincing me that you didn't really love me, that I deserved better than what we had together. He was systematic about it. Every insecurity I'd ever had about my career, my appearance, my worth as a person, he exploited all of it. I set down the bank statement and looked at Nicole, really looked at her, for the first time in weeks. What do you want from me, Nicole? I want a chance to earn back your trust. Not immediately, not easily, but eventually. I want to prove that the woman who betrayed you isn't who I really am. And how would you do that? I've already started. I've been working with the FBI to build cases against Derek and Victor. I've provided testimony that's helped them recover money stolen from other victims. And I've been seeing a therapist to understand how I let myself be manipulated so completely. Nicole reached into her purse and pulled out a small jewelry box. I also want to give you this back. She set the box on my desk and opened it. Inside was her wedding ring. I don't deserve to wear this until I've earned the right to be your wife again. If I ever earn that right. I stared at the ring, a simple platinum band with a modest diamond that we'd chosen together 8 years ago. It represented everything we'd built together and everything Nicole had thrown away for Derek's lies. Nicole, I don't know if I can get past what happened. The betrayal, the lies, the fact that you were planning to leave me for another man. That's not something you just forgive and move on from. I know. I'm not asking you to forgive me now. I'm asking you to consider the possibility that someday, maybe, we might be able to rebuild something together. What would that look like? I don't know. Counseling, I guess. Taking things slowly. Figuring out if there's anything left of what we used to have. Nicole stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city. Aaron, I know you could have let Derek disappear with the money. You could have let me face criminal charges without lifting a finger to help. You could have divorced me and moved on with your life. But you didn't. I did it for justice, not for you. Maybe. But you also did it because somewhere, deep down, you still care about what happens to me. Otherwise, you would have just let me suffer the consequences of my choices. She was right, though I wasn't ready to admit it out loud. I need time to think about this, Nicole. Of course. Take all the time you need. She headed toward the door, then turned back. Aaron, whatever you decide about us, I want you to know that I'm grateful. For 8 years of marriage, for the chances you gave me, for the way you fought for justice even when I didn't deserve it. You're a better man than I deserved, and I'm sorry it took losing you for me to realize that. After Nicole left, I sat alone in my office as the sun set over the city. thinking about everything that had happened over the past 2 weeks. My marriage had been destroyed, my wife's career was in ruins, and I'd spent a considerable amount of time and money tracking down a con artist who'd stolen from people I barely knew. But I'd also learned something important about myself. When faced with injustice, I didn't just get mad, I got even. When someone tried to humiliate me, I found a way to turn the tables. And when people I cared about were being hurt, I fought back. The question now was whether Nicole was still someone I cared about. My phone rang. Jamie. Aaron, I just got off the phone with the FBI. Derek's agreed to plead guilty to federal charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. He's also providing information about other con artists he's worked with. They think this could break up an entire network of romance scammers. What about his agreement to pay back the victims? He's already started transferring money. Sarah Martinez in Atlanta got her full restitution this morning. Jennifer Walsh in Miami will get hers tomorrow. The Morrison and Associates employees should see their back pay by the end of the week. And Victor? Victor's looking at serious prison time. The prosecutors found evidence that he's been embezzling money for over 3 years, long before Derek showed up. He was basically using the agency as his personal piggy bank. I walked to my office window and looked out at the lights of the city below. Somewhere out there, people were going to bed tonight knowing that the money stolen from them was being returned. Derek would spend the next several years making amends for his crimes instead of finding new victims to exploit. Victor would face justice for his greed and corruption. It wasn't perfect justice. Nothing ever was. But it was more justice than most victims of financial crimes ever saw. Jamie, do me a favor. Set up a meeting with the best marriage counselor in the city. Aaron, are you sure about this? No. But I think I owe it to myself to find out if there's anything left worth saving. What about Nicole? Does she know you're considering counseling? She will. I picked up Nicole's wedding ring from my desk and held it up to the light. It was a simple band, nothing fancy or ostentatious, but it represented 8 years of shared dreams and promises. Nicole had broken those promises, but maybe, just maybe, there was a way to build new ones.